Krishna consciousness, my spiritual master. Proper understanding of one's constitutional position in relationship to Krishna is so nice that it can at once lift one from the struggle for existence which goes on in the ocean of nescience. This material world is sometimes regarded as an ocean of nescience, and sometimes as a blazing forest fire. In the ocean, however expert a swimmer one may be, the struggle for existence is very severe. If someone comes forward and lifts the struggling swimmer from the ocean, he is the greatest savior. Perfect knowledge received from the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the path of liberation. The boat of Krishna consciousness is very simple, but at the same time, the most sublime. Om Jnana-timanandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Nivitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijanasahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Haripriye. Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktarunda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Madgavirapi Gopala Stvikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadaivasam Payahapitva Krishya Yusta Priyajanaha. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur prays like this in the end of his 10th canto commentary of Srimad Bhagavatam. My dear Lord Gopal, only if you accept my words to be as your cows will they provide sweet milk to give pleasure to your pure devotees. So we have to pray like this before we speak. Asi ched, asi papebhyah, sarvebhyah, papakritamaha, sarvam jnana plavenaiva, vrijanam santarishyasi. Even if you're considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you're situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Here in his commentary, Srila Prabhupada points out that material existence, in case you haven't noticed, after all it's 2026, and it's Kali Yuga, and we feel it. So he says it's compared to be like an ocean, this material existence, ocean of suffering actually. We can say that the ocean of material existence, if you will, is comprised of all the tears that we have cried in life. Every one of us, you know very well. We have all cried on occasion. Maybe we're crying now. But this world is not free of miseries. There are miseries at every step. And sometimes, therefore, it's compared to an ocean of material misery. On the other hand, sometimes it's also compared to a blazing forest fire. I'm from Southern California. Where are we now? We're in Texas. Sometimes I don't even know what continent I'm in. I move so fast. But where I come from, every summer, they have to call in the fire departments from the entire western half of the United States because the whole place just burns down. It's a natural part of the ecosystem, but we have aggravated that by the way that we live. And so the fires just become easily out of control. When you're in the middle of a blazing forest fire, there's not much you can do. And all those fire departments combined, still, they lose thousands, hundreds and thousands of acres almost every summer now. It wasn't like that when I was a kid, but it's like that now. So the spiritual masters can compare to be like a rain cloud, because that's really the only thing that can save you when you're in that situation. Showering rain of mercy upon us is what devotees do. Sarva bhuta hite rataha, Krishna says more than once in Bhagavad Gita. They're always working for the upliftment, for the betterment, for the relief of the conditioned souls in this material existence. Or if you're an Indian, you won't swim, correct? Unless you come to America. You don't swim. So to find yourself in the middle of the ocean, I mean, there's not really a whole lot you can do. You will die, almost literally. So that's what this material world is like. And what's even worse is that we have a strong inclination to make our situation even worse than it needs to be. How do we do that? By performing sinful activities. I have a very strict diet that I follow because the doctor actually prescribed statin drugs for me last winter in Chennai. And I don't want to take statin drugs because it ruins your quality of life. So I have to exercise rigorously, and I have to be very, very fanatical about what I eat. And then you can keep it under control, 100 or so. So in this material world, it's a little bit like that. The problem is that all the things that we want to eat, in general, you can say the rule of thumb is that it's not good for you. So, and everywhere I go, to make it worse, they say, please have some cake, won't you eat some fried, those from Chennai, what tatta is, and other such things. So, this is the problem. If we eat the wrong things, we just make life worse than it has to be for ourselves. And similarly, if we do the wrong things in life, if we don't act according to the rule book of material, physical universe, then we mess things up for ourselves. And we also mess things up for other people, which in turn comes back to bite ourselves in the future. So this is karma. We're stuck here. We're actually we're not material bodies, and we are not these material bodies. We're actually eternal spiritual entities, parts and parcels of the Supreme in small degree. Ramanujacharya puts it very beautifully. He says, we're like drops of ocean water. You've been to Galveston, I think, many of you, so you know. Ocean is a very big thing, but all that, whatever is in the ocean, you can find that basically the same constituents are going to be in one drop. But there's a big difference between a drop of water and the ocean. If a drop of water falls on your head, it's not a big deal. You may not even notice it. If the ocean falls on your head, that's another thing, you see. So we're small parts of the Supreme Lord. Another analogy is like a fire and sparks that come out from that fire. So we're small particles of the Supreme, and that's why we find such statements in the Vedic literature, Soham, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, favorite slogans of Shankaracharya and others. Identifying ourselves with the Supreme, but we should not take that out of context. We should not exaggerate it and take it in an absolute sense that I am the Supreme. No, the real reason that we come to this world is actually to entertain that very ideal. And that's a big part of the reason we suffer here. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We are spiritual beings, and we're currently trapped in these material bodies within a material world. We have eternal aspirations to fulfill. And we're trying to do so with things that are disintegrating in front of us at every moment. I just had cataract surgery in Shankar Netralaya in Chennai. And, because the body, after some time, it starts rotting while you're still inside of it. That's called old age. And, actually at every step of the way, we're trying to fulfill our eternal aspirations with facilities that are not by any means eternal. So we can only expect frustration from this world, and that's why we get it. That's why we suffer in this material world. That's what makes it an ocean of tears. That's what makes it like a blazing forest fire in which you can only burn. So when we have knowledge of who we are, that's called Atma Vidya or Atma Tattva, Atma Chakshu, we can say. When we have an understanding of who I really am, then it's very much relieving. Such a great relief. I had this great fortune when I was very young. I was asking important questions. I was a little bit pious, RC church. And, the priests didn't have very many answers for me, I thought. I was more attracted to Hinduism. And so I had become a vegetarian. I had read so many different editions of Bhagavad Gita because there were many. Even now there's maybe at least a dozen main editions of Bhagavad Gita. What I found is that I could not understand Bhagavad Gita no matter how many times I read it. You know why? Because the people who published those Bhagavad Gitas also didn't understand it. That I came to understand only later. Krishna says in chapter 4, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. All the great rishis and the sages of yore, they used to understand Bhagavad Gita in the proper process, in the proper method. What is that method? Parampara prapti. You have to get it from a disciplic succession coming down since time immemorial. There are 4 disciplic successions mentioned in the Puranas. Brahma Sampradaya, we can say. Rudra Sampradaya, Shri Sampradaya, and Kumar Sampradaya. And these have later been fortified by teachers such as Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Nimbarkacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also. So this is parampara. And by hearing from someone who is coming in parampara, we can actually begin to understand what Bhagavad Gita is teaching. Because most other people, I hate to admit, they're actually using Bhagavad Gita to advance their own agendas. Either they want to build a yoga empire, or they want to build a business empire, or they want so many things. But they don't want the real message of Bhagavad Gita, and that's why they cannot provide the real message of Bhagavad Gita. So I was frustrated by these Bhagavad Gitas until I came across this one, Bhagavad Gita as it is. When I first saw this title, I thought, now that is very presumptuous. Why does he say only his Bhagavad Gita is as it is? What about all the others? Well, I had my answer already, but I didn't recognize it yet. So when I read Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, I could immediately appreciate that, first of all, the original Sanskrit text is given in Devanagari script, which by that time even I had already learned. And then he gives each word individually translated. Then he gives the English straight translation, and then he gives a commentary. And in the 50 or so years since I first encountered this Bhagavad Gita, I've come to study all the major commentaries on Bhagavad Gita in the original Sanskrit, and I've come to appreciate that whatever Srila Prabhupada is writing in his commentary, he's not making it up out of whole cloth. He's basically just paraphrasing all of his predecessors. I've named a few of them: Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan, especially in our line. So it's very, very authoritative Bhagavad Gita. इस कारण से इस Bhagavad Gita में कोई विशेष शक्ति है कि it produces in anyone who reads it with an open mind viplava, a revolution, and it changes people. It changed me. I'm a very different person than I was when I was 15, growing up in Southern California. And only because Srila Prabhupada took the trouble to present this transparently. Transparently. What does that mean? He's not adding anything to it. He's not subtracting anything from it. And he's got no personal agenda to fulfill. He's trying to surrender to what Krishna wants. What does Krishna want? Anybody know what Krishna says about this? What makes him the... there is no servant in the world more dear to me, Krishna says, than whom?
One who preaches.
Yeah, one who is sharing this knowledge with other persons. How rare is that, to come across a person who has absolutely no personal agenda? Very rare. Everybody, every situation you enter into, everybody starts calculating, okay, what's in this for me? Who do I have to deal with? What am I going to, how am I going to advance myself here? Here's a person who had a very successful career, but he gave it up because his guru ordered him. You have to take this knowledge and share it with humanity at large, especially the English population, because he was very educated in English. In those days, that was somewhat rare. So, I was very fortunate to just be in the right place at the right time when Srila Prabhupada came and presented Bhagavad Gita as it is. And as I said, it changed my life. So this is the great benefit of transcendental knowledge. It relieves us from so much suffering, needless suffering, on account of misidentification with the material body and mind. We have to undergo so many changes. So that's what Krishna is talking about in this verse, that when you're situated on the boat of transcendental knowledge, even if you're the most sinful of all sinners, even if you've got so much papa, Hitopadesh tells us, Likhitam api lalate prochitam kaha samartha. Means, whatever's written on your forehead, you can't run away from that. Anywhere you go, there are going to be devatas controlling your environment, and all they have to do is look at the barcode on your forehead, and they can understand everything. It's in some kind of indelible, Devanagari or something. I don't know how they do it. But they know everything. They know what's supposed to come to you. They know what's not supposed to come to you. And your whole life is arranged like this. And you can't do anything about it. You've got minute independence. Minute independence to match our minute size. I mentioned already, right? We have the same constituent elements as the ocean, but we're only one drop out of that ocean. So you can say, yes, we're ocean. But we're not the whole ocean. So similarly, we're like little Krishnas, little gods, but we're controlled by the Supreme God. Sorry to say, that position is already filled. There's no vacancy there. You have to be satisfied. So we have minute independence to make our choices, but our choices are heavily conditioned. What are they conditioned by? Krishna tells us early on in the Bhagavad Gita. Anybody know what I'm thinking of when I say prakritehe?
Kriyamana.
Yes. Go ahead.
Prakrite kriyamanani gune karmani
sarvashaha
ahankara vimurhatma kartaham iti
Yeah.
vayate.
Ahankara vimurhatma. We're not only, murha means an ass. You say this. Ass. Arda. Or you have, we're not so bright. In Hindi we call this tube lights. So, we don't get it that quickly. We don't get spiritual knowledge. So, we have some independence, but we're heavily conditioned by these modes of material nature. But because we're so heavily conditioned by these modes of material nature, we think that we're not conditioned at all. We think we can do anything and everything. I can make any choice I want. I can do anything I want. Every boy can be president. I don't know if they still sing this now in America, but when I was a boy, they were singing like that. So we have minute independence, but what are these modes of material nature that I'm speaking of? Okay, you have to be quiet now, please. Yes, you. Thank you. Sattva guna means illumination, increased awareness in general. Sattva. And virtue that goes along with that awareness. Concern with duty, therefore. Adherence to scriptural injunctions. Purity. This is sattva guna. That is the best of the material modes, but it is still a material thing, actually. Hinduism is unique in the world of religion. What makes Hinduism unique? Many things. One thing that makes Hinduism absolutely unique is that we have the conception of mundane religion. Non-spiritual, we call it dharma, sadhanana dharma. It's not necessarily spiritual, but it is elevating. This is only, I don't find it anywhere but Hinduism. At least it's not so scientifically developed as it is in terms of Hindu metaphysics, Sankhya and other such principles. These are the things that are ultimately behind the sarva viti nisheta of the Dharma Shastras, for example. So we have Sattva-guna, Rajoguna. What is the chief characteristic of Rajoguna? We translate this Rajoguna as the mode of passion. So you can figure it out. Passion. When you think about passion, there's basically one thing you think about. A strong desire, uncontrollable urges. What is that? I think it was one English poet. Strange fits of passion I have known, he wrote. So, we find that the epitome of passion is sex desire, of course, and all of its byproducts. Because, you can't, as a human being at least, you can't just have sex. There all sorts of things have to go along with it to civilize it and sanitize it and make it look like something other than what it really is. But it's passion, and it's going on everywhere. I have my desires to fulfill. I'll do anything to fulfill those desires. Nunam pramatta kurate vikarnama yet indriya pritaya aprenoti. Rishabhadev tells us in the 5th skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam that when a person is overwhelmed by this bodily misconception that I am this body, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Christian, I'm a young, old, black, white, rich, poor, ityadi, then that person will not hesitate to do any sinful thing to fulfill his desires. Do we see this in today's world? Of course we do. Everywhere. People have hardly any scruples anymore. That is passion. Well, actually, it borders on ignorance. So the next one, tamoguna. Tamaha means darkness. Tamoguna means the mode of ignorance. Darkness, laziness, depression, dullness. These are 3 modes that condition us all the time. In fact, if you carefully study chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita, it's all about this topic. These 3 modes of material nature, they're constantly vying for supremacy amongst themselves. Sometimes we're more sattvic and we feel very light, and we feel very enlightened, and we feel very pious and virtuous, and so on. And sometimes passion just drags us into places where we would never have thought to go. Sometimes ignorance, we just don't want to deal with anything. We just want to blow it all off. That is tamoguna. Or we become depressed, or we just lazy, slothful. So these modes of material nature, they're constantly attacking us, and we can hardly control all these. This is what it means to be human, practically speaking. What is it? Another English poet, he said, sick with desire, chained to a dying animal, he knows not who he is. That's our condition. Overwhelmed by the modes of material nature. But when we hear transcendental knowledge as it's described in Bhagavad Gita, as we're trying to explain tonight, it awakens us to a new reality, a very liberating reality, an awareness that I don't have to undergo this sick process, this very, what do I want to say, gross material existence that entails so much suffering. And to be fair, a little temporary happiness as well. But what does this poet, one of our Vaishnava poets, Govinda Das Kaviraj, he wrote in Brajbuli language. Anybody know what Brajbuli language is? It's not very commonly known. It's basically a language that was invented by Gaudiya Vaishnavas. it takes Maithili grammatical superstructure and floods it with all kinds of Braj Bhasha and Bengali loanwords. So that's why when we hear this songs like this, we don't know what language is that. So he says, Bhaja Hore Man Srinandanandan Abhaicharanaravidare Durlabha Manava Janama Satsange Taraho E Bhava Sindhure. And then he says, Shita Atapa Bata Barishana, what is it? Eitin Jamani Jagire. I'm up all night. I'm working hard all day. What am I working for? Vipale Sevinu Kripana Durajana. I'm serving rascals and people that I don't even respect. Just to fulfill these momentary, just for a little, Chapala Sukhalabhalagire. Just to get a little bit of happiness in this world. Does this sound familiar to anyone? This is our life. And it's all because of this entanglement with the material body, this misidentification with the material body. Srila Prabhupada gives a wonderful analogy. He says it's just like, we were talking, my friend Sundar. He at one point in his life, he was very ambitious, like some of you are, and he thought, he's chasing his American dream. So he went out and bought himself a BMW. And it gave him some temporary happiness, Zor. But it also caused him some problems, really equally definite. So, but the point is that Prabhupada says, the analogy he gives, when we have something like a car that we're driving, we identify with that car. If somebody comes by with a key and scratches the paint, which they do in America, that's a pastime here, then, we feel it. It hurts, isn't it? Because of identification only. You have nothing to do with that car, my friend. But because we're identified with it. And the same principle actually applies to this car. Physically mutating car. Physically evolving car. Biologically dynamic car that we live in, called the material body. Krishna calls it a machine in Bhagavad Gita. Yantra Ruhani Maya. So this is our position in this world. We're so wrapped up in this. And it's causing us so much suffering. Yes, it's giving us a little happiness, but what does he say about that happiness? In another one of his songs. No, this is Vidyapati. He says, Tatala Saikate, yes. Vadi Bindu Sama. You're in a desert, like if you drive across the desert, let's say you're in West Texas, that's where the deserts are, right? And you see this, looks like water on the highway. It's not water. So he says you're like in a desert and you're only given a drop of water to drink. That's what the happiness is like in this material world. That's why Govinda Das told us, Chapala Sukha Labhavagire. Chapala Sukha. What is the next line of that song? He says, Edhana Jobana Putra Parijana Eteki Ache Parititire. Do you think there's any real love here? Shankaracharya answers that question. What does he say? I'm thinking of this is in Sanskrit. Some of the South Indians will know this. He says, as long as you have money, everybody's attached to you. Yavad vitto parjana sakta tavan nish parivaro rakta. Paschad jivati jarjara dehe vartam kopina prachati gehe. Even in your own house, if you're bereft of any capability of earning income or supporting the others, in your own home, nobody will even care to ask, how are you doing? It's just the truth of material so-called love. That's why he says, the answer is no. So, what is the next line? Kamala dala jala jivana talamala. This life, and on top of that, even if you can tolerate that, but on top of that, you don't know how long you have. It's like a drop of water on a lotus leaf with a waxy surface. It's gone. Any minute. Khaskar, Houston man. If you're in the wrong intersection, somebody has road rage, ek goli sab samat hogi. So, this is material existence. And he says like this. Shankaracharya said that also. What is the line? Same thing. Same analogy. Drop of water on the lotus leaf. I can't remember now, but anyway, you have the idea. Life is temporary. We mentioned this morning. You can, it's guaranteed that you can chant Hare Krishna with every breath you take. It's not guaranteed that you're going to choose to do that, but it is guaranteed possible. If you want, you can do that. What's not guaranteed? That you have one more breath to utilize that option with. You don't know. Some of us will not be alive, say in 10 years or 20 years. We may not even be alive next week. You just don't know. So, this is the problem with material existence. It's fraught with problems. And those problems are overwhelming problems. That's why half the United States is addicted to Chinese fentanyl. After their century of humiliation, they thought, let's do the same thing on the Westerners, right? The British got them all addicted to opium quite some time ago. And now they're fighting back and trying to retake their formerly glorious position, they think. So they're flooding America with pseudo-fentanyl, and it's killing people. It's killing even the police who touch it. They die from it. So, but why is there a market for these things? Because people are suffering, and they don't have an alternative because they haven't heard from Bhagavad Gita. This is the point. If you hear this transcendental knowledge, you can process your suffering in a different way than a person who has not heard from Bhagavad Gita. Yes, this is a fact. And you can experience this fact. Don't believe me? Just study Bhagavad Gita and see what it does for you. Guaranteed, you will feel a change if you're serious about it. And you study the right Bhagavad Gita, of course. And Bhagavad Gita Yatharup, as we say in Hindi. So, these are just a few thoughts that I have put together on just first glance at this verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 36. Chapter 4, as we mentioned, is entitled Transcendental Knowledge. It's a great boon upon society to have this knowledge. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore told us, he gave an open instruction to all Indians. Most of us here are Indians. And he told us what? Bharata bhumite hoilo manusha janmajar janma shartha koi koro parupakar. Iska matlab kya hai? If you've taken birth in Bharatvarsha, you have a duty to act as an ambassador of the spiritual wisdom of Bharatvarsha to all the other citizens of the world. India is now assuming its position as the global superpower, but really the real wealth of India is not, IT professionals. IT, what does it stand for? International Telugu. Kyonki aajkal America mein Telugu ka akraman ho raha hai na? If you don't believe me, just visit Alpharetta, Georgia. Or better yet, Dunwoody, Georgia. Anybody been there? You know exactly what I'm talking about. You cannot find a white guy anywhere in the whole city. And even, almost 100% of Bharatiya log are, in say, 90% Telugu log. Visa Balaji ki kripa se. So, I like to say, I knew him before he was famous. 2014, I went there, and people were starting to get to know him. Visa Balaji. It's a small temple outside of Hyderabad, near Vikarabad. And you wouldn't even think there was a temple there 20 years ago. But it was a beehive of activity. People going around the deity and just praying hard and just with absolute focus. The way that we should be chanting Hare Krishna, they were thinking like this on their numbers. How am I going to get this visa? How am I going to get out of here, get to America? Now I went back again just a couple of years ago. I was shocked because we couldn't find the place, for one thing. The whole village had been built up around it, and there was a parking lot that was perhaps an acre square parking lot full of buses from every province in southern India. And the streets were crowded with people, and just an amazing transformation. Because somehow the pujaris, they found we've got this little temple in the middle of nowhere. We have to circulate the rumor that this deity is giving out visas. So they did that. And then the deity was willingly cooperating in that process. Okay, I'll do it. Why? Because you get your visa, you come to America, you go to the Atlanta airport, and you're greeted by Mukund Datta Prabhu. Hare Bol! Have you seen this book yet? Hare Krishna. I know, I've seen it. I've lost count of the number of NRIs who have told me, frankly, had we stayed in India, we never ever would have become Krishna consciousness. So, this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order. It's God's design, as I mentioned. Visa Balaji is definitely participating. I go to a lot of temples in India. Any Tamils here, Tiruchendur, one of the 6 places for Skanda. So I go there every time. We have had personal experience of that deity of Skanda Swami. He helps us a lot, actually. So, they're all one little girl came to me in Tiruchendur and she asked me, so tell me, is Krishna God or is Murugan God? That's a kind of a hot seat question, right? I was thinking, how's Prabhupada going to answer this question? So I told her, look, here's what you have to do to find out. You go into the temple of Skanda and you pray like you've never prayed before. Give me the guidance, who is the Supreme. I don't care what you have to do, just please enlighten me. But you pray like your life depends on it. And I guarantee he will answer, because just like I've lost count of the number of NRIs who have told me they would never have become Krishna conscious in India had they stayed there, so in the same way I've lost count of the number of devotees in ISKCON who have told me that they were like this. Shaktas, Shaivas, anybody. You go to your Ishtadeva, you pray that you please reveal to me the supreme truth, and they will do it. Or I should say Kandipa. So, this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire, and he says this in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also, that somebody who takes this knowledge and shares it with people who really need it. They're suffering so much. You don't understand, as Indians, how much of a head start you have. You may feel overwhelmed by all of your ambitions and your desires and your petty miseries and all this. Believe me, you don't know what suffering is. You really don't. There are people so monstrous karma they have. You have to count your blessings, and you have to act as a conduit of mercy for other persons in this world. That is the responsibility of a person born in Bharatvarsha. We've just heard from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Amara Jnai Guru Hai Tare Desh. This is what he says. Or Jare Dekho Tare Kaha Krishna Upadesh. Same idea. Okay. I think I'll stop here, but if anybody has any questions or any comments, let's see if the hands go up. Usually they flood me with questions, but only after class is over. And we have to stay until midnight. Yes, please.
Prabhuji, a couple of comments. The Bhajagovindam verse is Nalini Dala Gata Jalamati
Nalini Dala Gata Jalamati Taralam Tatvat Jivitam Shaya Chapalam. Same thing.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
Also, Prabhuji, Krishna says Senani Nam Ham Skanda.
Yes.
So he says I am Skanda.
Yes. Okay, Manoj.
Very nice lecture. I wanted to ask you, in 4.11, Krishna says, as you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly. Can you please comment on what Krishna means by surrender and what are the different types, 5 different types of surrender?
Okay. Yeyatamam prapadyante tanstateva bhajamyaham. Actually, it's very interesting. If you think about this verse, what is he really saying? Jeyatamam prapadyante tanstateva bhajami. I will worship you if you surrender to me. That kind of love we see in Vrindavan. Krishna is carrying the paduka of Nanda Maharaj on his head, is it not? You've seen the picture. This kind of love. He says this. So, as you surrender means, if you want to worship Krishna as Brahma Jyoti, that's what he will show you. He will reveal himself as Brahma Jyoti only. If you want to see a little deeper than that, then he can reveal himself as Paramatma. If you're ready for something more personal than that, Bhagavan to hai. And he will reveal that. But it's up to us. The ball is in our court. These different revelations of the same supreme absolute truth, they're given in accordance with the approach that we choose. We are the ones who choose. Bhagavatam says very nicely, Varanti tat tattva vedas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. The same absolute truth is appreciated by different persons as either Bhagavan or Paramatma or Brahman. And some people are so gross, they're not on the spiritual platform at all. They can only appreciate Bhagavan as, what is that song? Sabako Sukha De Bhagavan. Right? Or, Dhanam Dehi, this Dehi, that Dehi. This is very elementary level of approach. You're not going to understand very much. They see God as the order supplier, is it not? Bribery hota hai, Hindu mandiron mein. So, it depends on you. If you hear these words of Bhagavad Gita, if you hear what Krishna is presenting, if you hear the glory of the bhakti that he's trying to urge us to embrace, and you make an attempt, any attempt, towards that bhakti, he will reciprocate. Don't believe me. Try it for yourself. Test it out. And you will see the result. Why should I be sitting here telling you this? I was born in Hollywood. What kind of adhikar does that confer upon someone for spiritual life? Not much. So, it's up to us. If you take one step towards Krishna, actually he's so merciful, Prabhupada said. If you take one step towards Krishna, he will take 10 steps towards you. Just like that fruit seller in Vrindavan, everybody know the story? She's holding a basket of fruit going from house to house, like they still do in villages. And she came to Yashoda's house, and she's calling out, and Yashoda gave Krishna some money, or some rice, because they used to barter in those days, not before fake money came into the picture. It's something valuable. He brought a handful of rice, but because he's Krishna, only a small boy, all the rice is falling through his fingers. By the time he got out to the Palwali, he tried to give her a few grains of rice, and she just looked at him, and she was so enchanted because he's so beautiful. She just fell in love with him, and she said, okay, here, take as many fruits as you want, go give them to your mother, because you're just so cute. And when she turned around, she saw that what was left in her basket, not the rest of the fruit, what was there? Who knows the story? Full of jewels, every kind of jewel. As if straight from the hidden chambers in the Ananta Shayana Swami temple in Tiruvananthapuram. So, this is Krishna. He's so kind. He says like that I will reciprocate commensurately, but actually it's not so. He gives us so much more than we give him. But you have to test this theory out. There's no way to really realize this unless you have a little faith. You try it for yourself. You try chanting Hare Krishna. Everybody is here tonight. We're chanting, or at least we're hearing. That's a start. You take some prasadam. You try to hear Bhagavad Gita. Kinchita Dhita Ganga Jalalava Karnika Pita Sakrita Piyena Murari Samarcha Kriyata Yasya Yamena Nacharcha. Everybody's afraid of ice, right? Last year we had this Sadhu Sangha retreat. Half the people who registered didn't show up because they were afraid, what will happen if I go to the airport? So it's like that at the time of death. Someone taps you on the shoulder and you turn around and there's some official looking person. Please, sir, please step this way. You know, when the ICE officials, you know, the immigration people, they usually, you know, customs people, they're usually very civil and they're trained, right? But it's understood that you have to go. You're not given a choice at that point. Don't wait for that time. If you try to worship Krishna once, even in this life, even once, then you don't have to have any kind of interview with Yamaraj, what to speak of an unpleasant interview with Yamaraj. So, yeah, you want to add something?
So Prabhuji, we had asked devotees to submit their questions, so there are over 10 questions actually.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, in the interest of time, I guess we can. So, first question is, I think these questions are going to help everyone. So, if everyone can please pay attention, probably that would be greatly appreciated.
It has a lot to do with the kids. Nahi to bal yatra ban jayega.
All right. So, first question that somebody has asked is, how and why can setbacks or adversaries be the most favorable time for spiritual progress?
Ask somebody who's been through Sari Sati. Mahadasha Shani. He's usually the one who does this, on a karmic level at least. But Kunti Devi went through suffering her entire life, isn't it? One after another. And heavy stuff. Trying to kill her children, right? And just everything, the Pandavas and the Kurus are always fighting. And at the end of the whole story, she said, Vipada Santuta Shashva Tatra Tatra Jagat Guru Bhavado Darshanam Yatsyada Punar Bhavadarsanam. May I have more miseries, because I find that when I have these challenges and setbacks, then I can chant your name with feeling. Then I can approach you with real sincerity. Begging, crying. Srila Prabhupada said we should chant the holy name like a child crying for his mother. We don't do that. What would happen if we did that? Are you willing to try this? It's a little scary, actually. But this is what Kunti Devi's experience was. And what was her logic? Because by calling out to you with such feeling, we get your darshan, in effect. And when we have your darshan, then we don't have to undergo this misery of material existence anymore. We don't even feel it. So that's one answer to that question. There are many ways to answer that.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you
I'm
so
trying
much.
to zip through 10 questions here.
Yes, Prabhuji. So the next question we have is, why do I need to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra only when other organizations or sects prescribe other mantra also?
Yeah, it's a reasonable question. The fact of the matter is that whatever we do for our spiritual life, Krishna says in chapter 17, text 15, you can look it up. You have to recite Vedic literatures. You have to work in terms of what the Shastra says. That's what he calls the austerity of speech. Yeah, I told you. So, whatever we do in spiritual life, any proposition that someone presents to us also, and any feeling that we have, or any intuition or presumably realization that we may have, we have to look and see, well, what is the status of this experience in terms of what the Shastra says. So with regards to mantras and whatever choices we make about how to worship Bhagavan, we have to keep our activities in line with what the injunction of the Shastra is. Now, with regards to mantras that we chant, you can chant whatever name you want, that's okay, of Bhagavan, of Vishnu. This morning we were hearing this, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. But Kali Samtaran Upanishad, this is Shruti mantra, mind you. It specifically says, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam. Nataha Parotoropayo Sarvavedeshu Trishite. These combination of names of Bhagavan, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, this has the potency to wipe out all the sins and all the miseries of the Kali Yuga. So that's the recommendation of the Shruti. We should respect that. And moreover than that, it says if you look everywhere else, you're not going to find any other method that's as effective as this. It's very explicit. So we have to go by Shastra. Yes, Shastra, Tasmat Shastram Pramanam Te Karya Karya Vijanataha. Chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says this. We have to choose what to do, what not to do based on what Shastra says.
Thank you. So the next question is, after getting into association, devotees association, I don't like material entertainment like movies, songs, etc. But I like to attend any spiritual gathering. Is it okay for me to listen to anyone? If not, how do I know what is the right source for spiritual progression?
Another good question. You can learn something from just anyone at all. You can always learn something from just about anybody. That's a fact. You cannot learn everything from just anybody. You have to use some discrimination, who to hear from. And we mentioned already in the beginning, Krishna says, Evam parampara praptam. You have to hear from someone coming in a bona fide disciplic succession. We were quoting or paraphrasing from Padma Purana, naming these 4 sampradayas that are authorized in Kali Yuga to disseminate spiritual knowledge. So you have to hear from someone in these lines. And furthermore, he says, Tad vidhi pradipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshanaha. You have to approach a bona fide guru who can explain everything very nicely. So use your intelligence, hear from the Shastra, what is the qualifications of a sadhu, what are the sampradayas that can actually transmit bona fide spiritual knowledge, and hear from someone in these lines.
Thank you so much. Next question is, when do I know that I need a spiritual master, a spiritual guru? And how do I know who should be my spiritual guru?
This is like, I want to buy gold. What do you do when you buy gold? Do you stuff your pockets with cash and head for Chor Bazaar? No, not advisable. You have to, what's the price of gold? Who is a reputable merchant? What, how much I have to, what's the proper price? How much I have to pay for this? How much is away? How well is it made? Everything about this, we check it out, isn't it? When you buy a house, when you select a college to apply for, any major decision you make in life, you check it out, or you should at least. So in spiritual life, why do we think that we can just wing it? Not like that. You have to use your discrimination. Means you have to learn who is a bona fide guru. You have to learn what is the duty of a disciple. We have to educate we need preliminary education hona parega. This is the point.
Thank you so much. The next question is, I see many devotees chanting on the beads. Why it is important to chant on the beads? Can I chant on the counter? And what is the right way to chant?
Yeah, beads are the traditional system. I always like to emphasize the traditional things. I have been in stages in my life, for example, when I was in college, I myself had one of those clickers. Because you have to. If sometimes when I was taking care of my mother also, that's like a round-the-clock responsibility in her old age before she died. Sometimes the circumstances are such that that's required, and we can accommodate that. But the best thing is to really focus, because generally the kinds of circumstances that require some clicker kind of situation, you're not really going to be very focused. So, the idea is to fix the mind. That should be the ideal at least.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to combine these two questions, which are very similar. How do you realize someone is chanting Shuddha Nam? And what are the most important steps in reaching Shuddha Nam?
Okay. This is essentially the same question, how do I find who's a bona fide spiritual master? Because it's assumed that a bona fide spiritual master is chanting Shuddha Nam. Otherwise, why do you accept him as a spiritual master? So you have to know what are the qualifications. You have to be able to recognize those qualifications. To some degree, it takes one to know one. So, we have to be very careful, but we also have to be as discriminate as we can. And the basis of that discrimination is not our emotions, nor our material desires, but what the Shastra says.
Would you like to speak a little bit on how to chant properly? Because there are many people who have started chanting.
The whole process of chanting, we have to fix our mind on Bhagavan. This is the idea. Ante Narayana Smriti. This is the injunction. At the time of death, your mind has to be fixed on Bhagavan. You can't be chanting, half-hearted japa. You have to really get into it. That's why we generally, those of us who are initiated, we try to rise early in the morning and chant before sunrise, before the day has started, when everything is very still, quiet, and there's no distractions. That's the proper time for spiritual practices. We call it Brahma Muhurta. Usually it's before sunrise, about an hour or so before sunrise. So that's a very efficacious way to chant, but the whole principle is to fix our minds without distraction, because that's what purifies us. If it doesn't stick in the mind, it's not really going to purify your heart that well. It will take some time, needless time we don't know that we have.
Thank you, Prabhu. The other question that I have received is Srimad Bhagavatam 12.2.5, Canto 12, Chapter 2, Text 5. It states, hypocrisy flourishes in Kali Yuga and is accepted as a virtue. Please shed some light on how hypocrisy is one of the greatest enemy in spiritual progress. From the lens of our Puranas, how does Krishna respond to this?
Yeah, very good question. Subtle question also. We hear in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the bull, the metaphorical bull of Dharma, is hobbling on only one leg in the Kali Yuga. 4 legs of Dharma. This is cleanliness, austerity, mercy, and truth. So cleanliness is, that leg is broken. Mercy, that leg is broken. Austerity, that leg is broken. The bull of Dharma in Kali Yuga is hobbling on only one leg, and that leg is truth. If truth also goes out the window, what is our standing? No hope, nothing left. So we have to be truthful. First and foremost, we have to be truthful to ourselves. If there's any evidence at all that you're not truthful with other people, it is definite that you're not truthful with yourself. You have to be truthful to yourself. That requires some humility. And humility is it's a great austerity in Kali Yuga. Someone asked Srila Prabhupada, what kinds of penances and austerities do you perform in Krishna consciousness? You know what he said? We try to become more humble than a blade of grass. That's our austerity. It's very difficult to do that. To honestly take assessment of your own actual situation, how much you've really realized, and to act on that also, to correct yourself, it's really hard. That's maximum austerity. You don't need to stand on your head or surround yourself with fires or meditate in some Himalayan cave. Just to be more humble than a blade of grass demands much more austerity than that. He said we have 4 austerities. Be more humble than a blade of grass. Be more tolerant than a tree. Offer respects to other persons. Never expect any honor for yourself. What could be more difficult than this? Not much. So that is the austerity. And that is, if a person is honest and not hypocritical, then this will be the attitude. It is so important this is that Sanatana Goswami has written in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita, there is no distinction. There's no difference between this absolute unconditional humility and pure love of Godhead, prema. They're one and the same. So you cannot cheat Bhagavan. He knows what you're doing. And maybe you can cheat somebody else, but the real problem is that you're cheating yourself. Because where are you going to end up with that kind of consciousness? It's not going to elevate you. So we have to be honest. This is the main thing. And Krishna says, if a person is honest like this, then I give him the intelligence by which he can come to me. He will supply everything we need. But you have to really consider, what do I want? Many times, Krishna gives us the stats in Bhagavad Gita. He says, 1 out of 1,000,000 people who take to this process, they go. Because once you realize that, hey, I'm not going to get any karma out of this. I'm not going to get any gyan out of this. All I'm going to get out of this is love. People who have dirty hearts, they run. They can't handle it. So hypocrisy means, that I'm trying to cheat in some way. That's not good. That's not the meaning of the word sadhu. Sadhu means an honest person. A few thoughts. I hope that's okay.
Thank you so much. So if anybody else has any question, this is the chance for you to interact.
Okay. Neil Kurtawala.
He's Neil.
Okay. Jai Ho.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Can you speak louder, Prabhu?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, if you could share the story of Prabhupada and like any...
Every time they ask this, in fact, last year they asked me the same question. Go back and listen to the tape. I saw Srila Prabhupada in 1976, June, in Los Angeles, where I was living. I was living at home. I was very young, maybe 14, 15 years old. And an elder godbrother who was preaching to me at that time, he said, really, you should try to come and see Srila Prabhupada. He's here for this week. You don't know how many more such chances you're going to get. Prabhupada is getting old. He may not be with us much longer, Do not lose this opportunity. Tulayama labenapi ityadi. You know the rest. So I took it up and I came and I was standing in the mezzanine of the Los Angeles temple at the rear of the temple room, facing the deity. Srila Prabhupada came in from a side door, and as soon as those curtains opened and he walked through them, he just illuminated the entire temple room. LA Temple is a fairly small temple room. It was like the sun god just walked into the room. I was stunned to see this. Many other devotees have told me they have had the same experience when they saw Srila Prabhupada. He was just shining. It was as if, they have these bright photographic lights that they use for movies, these big things. It was like that. But there was no such apparatus. It was him. So that was in itself stunning enough. Instantly I could understand, here is a person, he's not from here. He's a transcendental person. Instantly I could see that. And he didn't really do anything that was extraordinary. He just came and he paid obeisances to the deity, and he was taking darshan. He took Janamamritam, and then he went to sit on the Vyasasana. But somehow or other, every move that he made, the way that he did everything was just somehow extraordinary. Even though his actions were things we all do. But something about the way that he did them. So he sat on the Vyasasana. There was a Guru Puja. In those days, I didn't understand the Bengali so much. And then he sat down to give the class. When he started to chant, he sang this song that we also sing, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Ityadi. So, and I actually, by that time, I actually knew the words to the song. But still, I was just so mesmerized by Prabhupada's extraordinary demeanor that I just couldn't articulate anything. I was just stunned. It was an extraordinary experience. And then he began to speak from Srimad Bhagavatam. He spoke from the 6th canto, Ajamilopakyan. And frankly, I couldn't really understand a whole lot of his lecture because of his thick Bengali accent. Right? Where are you from originally? Okay, sorry. But in Sanskrit we say, Vyasadeva, right? हिंदी में उसको व्यासदेव बोलते हैं, बंगाली में bash, backdev, joydev, chotono. So, I couldn't get this so much. So I didn't get a lot out of the lecture, but, just that experience of having Prabhupada's association for maybe an hour or so, it was unforgettable. To this day, I can still see it all clearly in my mind. It made such an impression. You can't unsee that kind of thing. So, that was my first experience, but frankly, I didn't have so much training from Srila Prabhupada, so I can't give you any juicy stories about, personal instructions or anything like this. I came because of his books, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm still here because of his books. I've been sustained for 50 years by those books. And he wrote those books for that purpose. And the take-home message from this is that you should consider that even if you don't have an opportunity to have Prabhupada's association here and now in Houston in 2026, you do have these books. And that's the main thing. Because many, many persons, as I said, they come to Krishna consciousness and they go away. That's the statistic. Many people came into Prabhupada's association, but because they didn't take advantage of the Vani, they went away eventually. And those who really absorbed the Vani, they stayed. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Prabhu, can you speak louder, please?
First of all, thank you for a wonderful professor. I have this question about attachment. Earlier you talked about it, that we all know at the intellectual level that we see that we are attached to different objects. Do you think that there is a chance that we also get attached to our mode of worship, or our books, our rituals, and then fail to see the bigger picture that Krishna is trying to show us?
That's very common, actually. Yeah, did everybody hear his question? Should I repeat it?
Repeat it.
He's saying that, we all have attachment, but it's our nature to be attached to something. And sometimes people, they get attached to Krishna, which is okay, it's good, but they get attached to some kind of external formula or some kind of ritualistic mode of worship that, doesn't allow them to really see the bigger picture or to really enter into the spirit of bhakti as much. Is that a fair way to... So yeah, it's a good question. This is a characteristic typical of what we call Kanishta Adhikar in bhakti. There are 3 levels of Adhikar. Kanishta Adhikar means neophyte, or, entry-level Krishna consciousness. Madhyama Adhikar means we know something, we have learned something, we kind of get a sense of what's going on, but we're not perfect yet. There we have to use maximum discrimination. And then Uttama Adhikari, that person is completely perfect, and for him he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. But it's very common that, neophytes, Kanishta Adhikaris, they just argue about their worship is better than somebody else's worship, and they're generally very proud also, and they don't have very deep realizations, neither do they have much knowledge, and their faith is weak. It's a very tenuous position to be in, kind of like a drop of water on the lotus leaf, as you mentioned. So yeah, we should not remain on that platform. We should very enthusiastically and determinedly embrace the sincere practice of Krishna consciousness such that we actually change our consciousness, actually elevate our consciousness, and approach Krishna in a very deep way. Then we get realization, and when that realization comes, things that used to bother us don't bother us anymore. The knowledge is very solid, we don't lose it. People notice that we've changed, people are impressed and inspired by our character. This all comes from experience. It all Yaswanu Bhavam Akhila Shruti Saramekam Shukte Goswami ne kaha Prathama Skandhama. It's a question of actually genuinely awakening Krishna consciousness. We have a process that will do that, but we have to do that. We have to follow that process with that goal in mind. Otherwise, if you just follow it for the sake of following it, as a social religious obligation, okay, it's better than nothing, but it's not gonna get you too far. Is that okay?
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much.
I saw one more hand.
Thank you so much for coming and visiting us and giving us your association. So we all know.
You're from Austin?
Mataji is Damodarati Mataji.
Okay, I recognize you from somewhere, sorry. Chashma Pante.
Yeah, I was wearing
Okay,
glasses.
got it.
So, even in your lecture you mentioned that this world is the place of misery, and the happiness is swapala sukha, very little happiness we get. Even to get that little happiness,
to work so hard.
we had to work really hard. And the problem that I face,
It's kind of like an AI search, right? I went through 4 or 5 answers to one question with different modes of AI, all of them failed. Okay, go.
So the struggle that I face every day is after work, it's very difficult for me to get out of work. Even though I am not working, my mind is fully occupied with all the work issues or deadlines and tasks, everything. And that affects my morning sadhana and it goes in a loop.
Okay, I already know where this is going. Let me just cut in here and say something that may answer your question.
Can you summarize the question real quick?
Yeah, you're overwhelmed by your experience during the day, and it affects your sadhana.
Disengage and be mindful.
How to cut off after you clock out, and rein in your mind and focus on Krishna consciousness. It's not easy. I'll admit. It doesn't have to be as hard as we make it. That's another matter altogether, and it's a big matter. But assuming that we have to do what we're doing now for the time being, how to disengage from that professional environment and calm the mind and focus on Krishna consciousness. Well, a big part of this, Tamal Krishna Goswami used to say, is what time do you take rest at night?
Asking me.
Yes. Don't mind a personal question.
Yeah, so our goal is at least 10, but I cannot go to sleep that day.
Yes, because the mind is still spinning. So he says the challenge is not, how to get up early in the morning and do your sadhana. The challenge is actually how to take rest at night. But if you can somehow, one great thing is if you don't have to eat at night. I used to eat at night. I don't eat at night anymore. It's a big help, I have found. It's a great help. Because you get better rest. And here's another thing. According to Ayurveda, the earlier you go to sleep, the better you sleep. If you sleep between 9 and 3 a.m., that is maximum rest you get. And, otherwise you're going to get some rest, but it will not be so effective, and you'll need more of it, and you'll be fuzzy maybe. Try by any means possible to take rest early. And that's difficult for Indians, I know, because we eat dinner at 10 o'clock, isn't it? So, if you can do that, then you can get up early, and if you get up early, you do your sadhana at that time, as we mentioned already. That's the ideal, if you can do it. So, do whatever you have to do. Surround yourself with association who is doing that. Somehow stay connected and strive, always, for that ideal, and hote sab kuch theek ho jaye. Is that okay?
Yeah, the transition is really difficult.
Sorry?
The transition from one.
Yeah, it's as I said, this is an austerity. This is the austerity that is relevant to our needs in Kali Yuga. Not just, standing on your head and fasting and all that stuff. To really, tackle this kind of problem. This is the practical austerity that is encouraged. Very practical. So association is a major part of that. You have to be connected with people who are serious like that. And that's going to be a major source of prerana for you. So, is that okay? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Just a follow-up question of what Mataji was asking. I've been knowing Mataji for a couple of years now, and her devotion we have seen. So, what makes her think that her work is not in Krishna's devotion? Why does she feel it that way?
Okay, good question. This is another way to look at it. She's coming from a little different perspective. But yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with working also if you are engaged in that work with the intention of giving the fruits of your work to Krishna.
She is.
Yeah. So, like Arjuna was thinking, how do I get this battle consciousness out of my head, right? And Krishna didn't encourage that. He said, look, you're a kshatriya, you have to do this. Well, that's a valid viewpoint as well. When your work is dovetailed towards Krishna consciousness, and you know that, and you believe that deeply, and your spiritual master confirms that, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And Prabhupada said that is not Maya. It's not necessarily something that you have to get out of your head. But I think you're asking more from the sadhana's perspective, as I got your question. So yeah, during sadhana, you definitely have to get out of that work consciousness and just focus entirely on Krishna. A beautiful shloka is written by Bilvamangala Thakur. He says, when we have, what does he say? When we're able to give very critical thought to philosophy, very sensitive thought to literature, and ceaseless thought to our duty, that time is when we have given incessant thought to Krishna. In other words, as we heard in Prabhupada's purport the other morning, if you want to really get into your grihastha ashram dharma, which you should do, then the best way to do that is by focusing your mind on Krishna, because that puts everything into perspective. Other things will take things out of perspective. Remember, we said in the beginning, the whole focus here is to remember who we really are and not who we are not. We identify or misidentify with all the wrong things. And the association that we surround ourselves with most of the time, that just compounds that tendency. So at least some point of the day, for a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, we should just focus on pure spiritual identity and get into that. So, but both these perspectives are valid. They both have great utility. Something else? Okay.
Thank you so much, for giving your association and being patiently answering my question. So my question is probably, I'm trying to increase the chanting every day, but some days I just feel I'm doing it mechanically. But
It's very similar to his question.
Yeah, but sometimes I feel it not appropriate because I'm just doing mechanically. I'm not putting my emotions or my bhav in that. So I feel sometimes I rather do 1 or 2 chanting malas with a bhav rather than doing 10 chanting malas. I'm not yet to the 16, I'm trying, but rather than just mechanically doing 10 malas a day. So what do you suggest for me, who is at the initial level, is trying to...
You're not initiated, I think.
No.
So, I mean, you have to work towards the ideal in a practical way that you can handle, actually. So I can appreciate the quality over quantity approach. That is valid. I have no objection to that. If it's...
okay with the...
I mean, I'm not encouraging you to chant less.
No, of course,
but I'm encouraging you to fix your mind more on whatever chanting you do. You have to decide what you can handle. Anything else? Yes, Manish. How do you know it's final?
How does one know if they're making spiritual progress?
Very good question. Yeah. The Bhagavatam answers this itself, the famous shloka. When you eat, nobody has to tell you that your hunger is being satisfied, that your tongue is happy, and that you feel nourished. Nobody has to tell you. You feel it directly, experience it. So in the same way, when you're making spiritual advancement, you feel it. You're no longer attracted to sense gratification in the same ways that you were before. Right? You are attracted to divine things in ways that you were not before. It's very practical. This is what Krishna means in chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita when he says, Pratyaksha avagamam dharmyam. It's something that you directly experience by direct understanding. And even with your senses you can appreciate this. It's not even an intellectual thing. Pratyaksha means, you see it, you feel it. So, another way to look at this or to answer this, if you're feeling more attracted to Krishna and less attracted to Maya, that means you're making advancement. Otherwise, if you're feeling more attracted to Maya and less to Krishna, then you're doing something wrong. The process is actually perfect. The thing that's not imperfect is our application of that process. So, we have to work on purifying ourselves. That's why I said the introspection comes in, and the honesty, of course. And, we have to be educated enough to recognize what are some of the common pitfalls, which we've also mentioned tonight. So, all these things have to be taken together. Now, I'll give you a little hint here, a little secret. One thing that kills all these problems with one stroke, you keep yourself in good association, satsanga. That's why Govinda Das Kaviraj sang, Durlabha Manava Janma Satsange Taraha Ebhava Sinture. It's all accomplished through good association. Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Koi, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. Sarva Siddhi Hoy means you get everything is perfected. So keep in good association, you will find that all your problems are solved. Okay? Arkoi?
Follow on question to what he mentioned.
Nice strong voice, I like this.
Some people think, those who do impersonal meditation, they see some light, they see some people even get out of body experience and all that, and they think that they are making tremendous spiritual progress, but they do not understand that it is all these experiences are still in the material world.
Yeah.
And so what like you said, how much love have you felt for Krishna? How much it is increased? That's a good yardstick or a good measurement. But these people don't even know about devotion and anything. Mm-hmm. So how can we tell them that your experiences are purely material experiences? It has nothing to do with spiritual progress.
Well, I don't know that I would say that, frankly. Because, there are valid transcendental experiences that are non-devotional. We mentioned this earlier. You may have some genuine realization of Brahman, for what that's worth. You have come to appreciate that it's not worth that much in comparison with Krishna Bhakti. And anyone who embraces Krishna Bhakti also realizes that pretty easily. But a person who has not had any experience of Krishna Bhakti cannot necessarily see that. I wouldn't say that his experiences are all mundane. It's not necessarily so. But, it's like this. If you realize Brahman, you will realize eternity. And that's a great relief for someone who's always dying. We keep repeatedly dying. Why do we have to do that? You don't. And once you have this knowledge that Krishna is speaking about, that's a great relief. It's valid. It is a spiritual experience. But that pales in comparison to, say, the enlightenment that comes from the direction of the Paramatma, or the peace that comes from focusing your mind on God in this form, like the yogis do. Jnana vastitatirgatena manasa pashyantiyam yoginaha. And yet both those experiences, the eternity aspect of Brahman realization, the eternity and knowledge aspects which are there in the Paramatma realization, they cannot compare even slightly to the ecstasy that comes along with Bhagavan realization. So, this kind of relates to his question also about yayathamam prapadyante. If you're only willing to approach Krishna in this impersonal way, then you're going to get this appreciation of your eternal existence for what it's worth. And it's valid. No complaints there. If you want to take it a step further, then you're going to get active participation from Bhagavan. Not from Bhagavan, from Paramatma. In the form of enlightenment from within the heart. And that's even better than that, because you make some advancement in terms of spiritual knowledge, which we've been glorifying tonight. But most of us want to be happy. Correct? Raise your hand if you don't want to be happy. Right. We want to be happy. And happiness or bliss, ananda, that comes from the introduction of Hladini Shakti. Hladini Shakti means the Lord's own pleasure potency. She has a name. Her name is Radharani. And that is where you have to enter bhakti. If you really want to experience what spiritual bliss is, aside from just knowledge and peace or eternity, you want to actually have some personal interaction. You want to have some experience of spiritual variety and this intense ecstasy that they glorify as part and parcel of bhakti. Then you have to actually put yourself out. You have to become a servant. That's the way it is. And we do that by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, we quoted from Bhagavatam already. The same absolute truth is realized impersonally or localized as Paramatma, but ultimately, as Bhagavan, he's going to be the most. It's going to be the most intense experience. Is that okay? Rasovaisa, Taittiriya Upanishad says that the nature of this absolute truth is rasa. Rasa means there's a person experiencing it, and there's an experience to be had. That's variety. That's not just oneness. So you have to enter into the realm of bhakti if you want to experience this. Bhakta and Bhagavan, and the love that they exchange, it's like nothing else. There's nothing can compare to that. It's not interrupted by anything. It's eternal. It's not tainted with anything also. It's completely pure. It's an eternal, intense, dynamic experience of loving ecstasy. And what else are we looking for in this world? Not much. Okay.
All right. Okay, last question then.
Prabhu, you stressed upon having a bona fide teacher. So what are the qualities of a guru and a sadguru?
You read Bhagavad Gita because Arjuna asks the same question and Krishna answers it. Now I'm going to tell you. You got to read Bhagavad Gita. I will tell you. In a nutshell, Krishna tells Arjuna, when a person has given up sense gratification, all kinds of material desires, doesn't mean he's given up activities. Doesn't mean his senses are sitting idle. No. But he's given up the endeavor to exploit this world or evade the authority of Bhagavan. And instead he's absorbed in bhakti. When a person has given up all sense gratification, that is the acid test that tells you he's got to be experiencing something higher, otherwise he can't do that. You can't give up something that you're attached to unless you're experiencing something higher. So that's the baseline, test by which you can understand if a person is spiritually advanced. And in our line, that means that the person will be following this process very strictly, because it does involve some degree of austerity. You do have to give some things up, but the fact that the person is following strictly according to the Shastric injunctions, that's always there, then that tells you that he's got to be experiencing something. Okay? That's a simple answer, but there's many, many ways we can answer the same question in much more depth. Best you just read Bhagavad Gita very carefully, because all the answers, these questions people are asking, the answers are there. You have to just hear. All right. So I think It's time to stop now. Thank you all very much for coming again. Thank you for listening so patiently. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
His Grace Mukund Datta Prabhu ki Jai.